All right. So welcome back, everybody. I'm so excited to have James Braha here yet again to talk about his new book and the new additions to his book, and one of my favorite books, Ancient Hindu Astrology for the Modern Western Astrologer. It's a super thick book. It's like twice as thick as the other one that you've published, right?
This is the revised edition, so it's 200 pages bigger.
Okay.
Just to show you side by side what if you can tell,
Yeah.
one of them is a lot bigger than the other.
Yeah.
I spent a year revising it. I knew that it was going to be the biggest project. As I was revising all of my books for ebooks, I left this one for last because I wrote it in 1985, came out in 86, and I knew that there would be a lot of changes, but I didn't really know that I would be rewriting the planets and houses as much as I did.
Okay.
And I didn't know that I would be rewriting all of the famous horoscopes.
Mm.
So the difference actually in numbers is that the famous horoscope section was 66 pages, written by somebody who had been in the using Hindu Vedic for 2 or 3 years. Now, from 66 pages, it's 126 pages of analyzing the same people's horoscopes, but it's from the point of view of somebody who's been practicing for 35 years. And there's a 10-page explanation of Donald Trump's horoscope as well. So that's completely new. But, one of the things, I was really chomping at the bit to be able to revise the planets and houses, because when I wrote those, I didn't want to, I did say things that were my experience, but I didn't have nearly as much experience. So I was also using what I was taught and what was in books, etc. And I didn't realize back then that the Hindu Vedic books, they leave out so much of the obvious. So anytime a person has a planet in the 8th house or 12th house, it's a disaster, the world's coming to an end, you're going to die early. They don't even mention, and I didn't even mention, oh, benefics in the 8th house, long life, sexy appearance, money from wills and legacies. I didn't mention those things because nobody else did in the books. They just wanted to convey that the 8th house and 12th house was bad.
Yeah.
So, it was a funny thing, but occasionally I would give the book to somebody who was into astrology so that they could read their planets and houses. And I would read them and I'd say, God, this doesn't look so good, because it was leaving out a lot. So this book, I could hand it to anybody. They could read their planets and houses and get a much more balanced approach. Before we get into this, I have a lot to say. I want to say that if you're buying the book in the actual, not an ebook, but the actual book, then you want to go to Amazon. They're the only one that sells the actual physical book. The ebook you can buy worldwide from different platforms, Kindle, all the others. If you're buying the book, you can buy it in the United States, the UK, Canada, France, Germany, Japan. That's about it. Other countries have to buy the ebook unless they want to pay $100 shipping cost. They can, if they want to pay me $100, they'll get it in 5 days. Anyway, so I also want to start out by showing the statue of the goddess Lakshmi. Why am I showing the goddess Lakshmi? Because I am in a Venus bhukti. Venus is a very afflicted planet in my horoscope. So for these 3 years, I have Lakshmi around. I'm doing yagyas to Lakshmi. But I'm mentioning this because part of the difference in this book is that when you read the planets and houses, first it's going to tell you Venus in this house. Then it's going to say Venus exalted, what that means. Then it's going to say Venus fallen. In all of the planets and houses, whenever I talk about a fallen planet, underneath it it will say the person, if it's Venus, the person should keep Fridays restful and spiritual. They should worship the goddess Lakshmi. They can have pictures or statues of Lakshmi around the house. And they should chant the mantra for Venus or have yagyas performed during the dasha or bhukti.
Mm.
So if it's Saturn, it'll say the same thing. It'll say worship Shiva, pictures of Shiva, keep Saturdays restful, have mantras and yagyas for Saturn. This is all throughout the book.
Mm-hmm.
Also throughout the book is when it gets to a planet that is fallen, say it's Mercury. So you have Mercury fallen in the 3rd house or the 8th house or the 6th house. It will then say, whenever Mercury is fallen, the person may have troubles with the lungs, intestines, nervous system. Mm-hmm. If the person has Jupiter fallen, it'll give the explanation. It'll say to have the mantras and yagas to keep Thursdays restful. And then it'll say, whenever Jupiter is fallen, the person may have troubles with the liver, gallbladder, spleen, or allergies. So this is incredibly helpful for people that are starting out and learning, because when I came back from India, nobody told me that information. Mm-hmm. They told me, oh, if you want to know about health, look at the 6th house and the 1st house. Venus, say Mars in the 6th house afflicted, problems with the bloodstream and the muscles. Mm-hmm. Mercury in the 6th house, problems with the lungs, intestines. But nobody said, by the way, if Mercury is afflicted in the horoscope, problems with those health areas. Yeah. So the student, when they're reading this, they will learn how to do a horoscope to know where the health problems are, regardless of what the 6th house is doing.
Yeah, no, and I'm so glad that you said that. You're actually answering questions that I had for you. Like, how is this book different than other astrology texts? I've never found a book that tells you, first of all, like, this is going to be the afflicted position, and here's also what you can do about it. Like, if it's afflicted, it may bring these issues, and then here's also a remedial measure for it. So I feel like that's really unique to the book. And I also think that what you're saying is so important. And I didn't even realize that until having a reading with you and talking with you about having an afflicted planet. Like, it's going to bring health issues related to that planet, possibly, even if it's not associated to a house that has to do with health.
Right.
And I didn't know that until talking to you.
When I'm doing a reading, I try to tell a person, this is your best planet. You're going to have real luck with this particular, with Jupiter. Your Jupiter is so good, you're going to have great luck with it. But your worst planet is Venus. You're going to have trouble with. I try to explain that to people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, then you also give them remedial measures too, though. And I think that's what's so powerful about how you practice as an astrologer and the book, is that it's saying, like, yeah, here are the difficulties, but there's something that you can do about it. And it's very empowering, and it's like, you can get a gemstone, you can do a mantra, you can get a yagya, but there are remedial measures that can be taken for it. And again, I love that. I love that that's something that's included in this book. And I think it's something that's really unique.
There's there's something similar. When a person has Kuja dosha, Mangal dosha, or Manglik, when Mars is in the 1st, 4th, 7th, 8th, or 12th house, there will be marriage troubles. So in the original book, if you read Mars in the 1st or 4th or 7th or 8th or 12th, it would say marriage troubles, etc. Now in the new book, it says, if you are in a culture where you can find another partner, arrange a marriage with another person that has Kuja dosha, that will work. If you are in the West, you need to wait if you're not arranging a marriage with someone else that has Kuja dosha. If you're in the West, you generally want to wait until the late 20s, early 30s, because by then you will have realized you need to choose a partner who's going to be good for you. So this is in when Mars is in when you're reading the book, it tells you what to do if you have Kuja dosha, how to work with it. It's and then in the famous horoscope section, see, the original book showed people how to use the system, but it was more about how to use it. But actually analyzing horoscopes was not going to be very easy for them, because because there wasn't enough material really well said. In this book, when you get to the famous horoscope section, it is so I couldn't believe what I was looking at. I looked at I joke about this. When this book originally came out, people raved about it. It changed the world. I got letters from all over the world saying, now I can understand how it works. Now I can do it, et cetera, et cetera. But one guy said, this is a great, he was writing a review or something. He said, this is a great book. You'll learn how to do it. And there's even a there's a section of analysis of famous horoscopes with threadbare descriptions. And I thought, threadbare description. Well, when I came back to this book in 2020 to redo it, they are very threadbare. They are nothing like what the book is now. The other fascinating thing is, and then I'll let you speak. The other fascinating thing is, at the age of 35 or 34, whatever it was when I was writing it, I was trying to prove how it works, how to prove, oh, look, this is here and it really works. And, and I'm sometimes, because I didn't have enough experience, I'm trying to fit square pieces into round holes because I don't know what I'm doing as much. Okay. So now that whole section is so well done and so intricate. You will see. What I want to say though is that in this version, I'm letting people know when it doesn't work. In other words, because so much of it does work, because I've had so much experience with it, and I'm saying, look, this, like Lyndon Johnson's horoscope, the birth time is now in question. It wasn't in question when I did the book, but 20 years later, some people think he has a different ascendant. So I show in the chart, I say, look, if he has this other ascendant, Leo, suddenly he has no younger brothers and sisters. If you use the Cancer ascendant, which was the birth time that I was given way back, you can see 4 younger siblings easily. So I do that. But when you're reading this, you're going to see the places where I say, now here, you can't, like Marilyn Monroe, I say, you don't look at this chart and say, oh yes, this is a movie star, actress, performer. It's not as clear. She does have Venus in the 10th house, but that's about it. Normally, with an artist, an actor, you're going to see a 3rd house and a 5th house that is really prominent. You don't see it here. So not only am I showing everything that works, but also saying, now here's something that you're not going to be able, like John Lennon, you're not going to be able to see him as a musician nearly as much as you will see him as a lyricist. His lyrics were everything.
Yeah.
And so I'm saying, this here, you're not going to find what you're looking for. It just doesn't show up because there's so much that does show up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's really amazing, first of all, that you even wrote the first book after studying for a few years.
That was karma. That was just karma. That was not me. That was Shiva saying, okay, we need somebody to do this. This guy's got the right horoscope. He'll do it. I mean, it was just karma. It was luck.
Yeah. But it still came out really well, considering you had been studying for 2 years. And it's an amazing book still. But I think that you studying, as you mentioned, like over 30 years and now coming back and revising the book and adding to it, of course, it's giving the world another piece of information and a really valuable tool, but it's also showing and demonstrating how you can change as a practicing astrologer throughout the years and just how much room there is for growth.
Ooh.
And especially me, right?
You don't know the amount of things that I said, oh my God, I said that. In that original book, I said, oh, this won't be good because this planet's retrograde and therefore it's afflicted. About 5-6 years ago, I kept hearing these people. I said, why are these people thinking retrograde planets are afflicted? They're just passive. I go back to my book and there it is. I'm parroting what other people had told me.
Okay. Yeah. And so what overall inspired you to revise the book? Is it this? Is it like looking back and being like, oh my gosh, there's just so much to correct and so much to add? Or was there a specific event that occurred that made you want to revise it, or what exactly inspired you to, because it's a
Well,
big commitment. I mean, this is a big revision. It's not just like a small revision. It's like you wrote another book.
it's
Yeah.
huge. And in the acknowledgments, I acknowledge my wife because no, really, I can hardly tell you what it's like when I begin focusing on astrology. The focus, you'll see it in the famous horoscope section, especially. But you also can see it when you start to think, wait a minute, you had to write 108 planets and houses, and when they're exalted and when they're fallen. So every day I was doing this, I thought it would be 3 or 4 months. You'll hear me on many interviews saying, oh, it's coming out in March. Oh, it's coming out in June.
Mhm.
After 7, 8 months, I was so frustrated just because you have to understand, I started 2 years ago updating the art and practice of ancient Hindu astrology, how to be a great astrologer, living reality, how to predict your future. It was 2 years worth of work. And after about 7 or 8 months of this one, which was the most intense, I would get frustrated. And at breakfast, I would say, when is this going to end? She'd say, James, it's so important. Your students are going to love it. And when she would say that, it would give me a week. For the next week, I would be pumped up. But I started with just updating because I knew that people wanted ebooks. Honestly, I'll tell you my honest to goodness thoughts.
I
Okay,
know you will.
the I can't help it. I can't help it. The the honest to goodness thoughts were, I didn't update this book for anybody today. It's not who I did it for. I'm 69 now. I know I've only got another 40 years. I'm kidding. I'm getting up there, right? And my thought was, I want to make sure that when I leave this world, there is a basic fundamental book on Hindu Vedic astrology that is really as good as I can possibly make it. That was number one. Number two, if God forbid I have to come back and reincarnate in this world,
Yeah.
I want that book for me. I'm sure I will show up and as a 15-year-old and I'll say, oh, look, there's astrology.
That's
But it
amazing.
was it was really for to leave it for the world for the next, because now with the thing is, now with the internet, as long as the world exists 100 years from now, that book will still be there. And part of the reason, one of the things that you'll notice is that very few Hindu Vedic astrology books put nearly as much attention on the planets and houses.
Mhm.
My planets and houses are now 220 pages.
Yeah.
And the reason is it's near impossible. So the sun in the first house, the sun exalted in the first house, the sun fallen in the first house, the sun in the second house, the sun through all 12 houses, exalted and fallen, and then Mercury, and it's 108.
Mhm.
It's the difficulty of it. You need the kind of patience that I now have because I'm in the Saturn dasha. I have all the patience to actually do that. Speaking of which, another addition to the book you may have noticed is that Ayurveda is now in there a little bit. So if a person has Mercury or Saturn in the first house, at some point in that explanation, it will say, unless there's mitigating factors, such as another planet aspecting the sun, moon, ascendant, or ascendant ruler, the person will have a vata nature. If Saturn or Mercury is in the first house, the person is vata. That means they are mental, airy, intellectual, nervous,
Mhm.
and they should eat certain foods.
Mhm.
If the person has Venus well, forget Venus because Venus is complicated.
Mhm.
If a person has Jupiter in the first house, the person will be kapha. They will be slow, steady, lethargic, but firm, and they can have coffee and caffeine and alcohol and hot spices, whereas somebody like Vata or Pitta should not have that. So that's actually in there with planets in the first house.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is this an addition? Like that wasn't in the first book. This is a new.
No, no, no.
Okay. And the other question I had, one of my favorite parts about, I haven't, I just got this book, like I just ordered it and just got it. So I haven't looked through all of it yet, but the miscellaneous horoscope information, like where you put,
Yogas?
it's near the yogas. It's like a few pages before, and it's like the moon in Aries is positive. It's just like random stuff.
Random stuff. That's from
so helpful.
that's
And
from
you don't
a
find that anywhere.
that's from a long time ago.
Okay.
But you will find most of it. But you will find you're going to find you want to talk about random pieces of information. I'm going to give you some right now, okay?
All
Because
right.
I wrote them down. Mars in the seventh house. Hold on one second.
All right. I'm patient.
No.
I'm patient for random astrology facts.
Random stuff. Mars in the seventh house. In most texts, it'll say Mars in the seventh house, the person's spouse may die. Now, this is not everybody, but a person with Mars in the seventh house is much more likely to have a spouse die than somebody that has Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, etc. Right?
Yeah.
It's obvious.
Yes.
But this is where I'm gonna so that this is not a video on an advertisement of my book. I'm gonna give you some random stuff that's in the book. Okay.
Yes.
That is useful for even if people don't buy it. So what I had noticed is that people that have Mars in the seventh house, they often are present at the death of the spouse.
Oh wow. Oh my gosh.
My brother had that. She died in his arms. It's something that I've noticed. Okay, this is my astrologer Padia used to say. I had two. Santanam was a scholar. Then 2 years later, I went to Padia. He was more a practitioner. And there were times when he would say, James, you take it from me. I have marked this. When he said, I have marked this, that means go to the bank on it, go to sleep on it, take it to the bank. It's going to be accurate. I'm not saying everybody that has Mars in the seventh will have that happen, but you'll be accurate a fair amount of times with that.
Okay.
And when I was doing the horoscope of Jackie Kennedy Onassis in the book, I revised that, of course, as I did all of them. And suddenly it struck me that in the original book, I had mentioned how she has famous, powerful husbands, Rahu in the seventh, and there might have been a planet aspecting it, and the ruler of the seventh in the 11th, large sums of money. So she gets wealthy partners, but nowhere could you see her having an experience where her husband is shot right in front of her.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the Navamsha.
Okay. I was going to ask about the D9. Go ahead.
I was looking at the Navamsha, and the ascendant there, I believe, was Taurus, but the birth time is not perfect. It's a 2:30, I believe, if I remember correctly, 2:30. When birth times are on the half hour, I never do a horoscope for anybody. If they give me a birth time on the half hour or hour, I say, tell me the real birth time. Is that what's written on the birth certificate? No, sometimes it is. 90% of the time, it's not written on the birth time like that. They've approximated it. And 2:30 turns out to be, 417. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But anyway, her birth time was from memory. So it's not double A. You get the best birth data from the Lois Rodden data bank. It's also called AstroDinst. Astro, Dienst. They have the best birth data, but nobody has perfect birth data. Sometimes they get it wrong, but that's the best that I have found. So for Jackie Onassis, it's from memory at 2:30. Therefore, it's not a double A. You back it up 10 minutes. Now she's got in the Navamsha, Mars in Libra, Mars not in a good sign, in the seventh. The fallen sun in Libra in the seventh. The seventh house ruler Venus fallen in the sixth.
Oh, wow.
So now you can see how that could happen. Okay, so let me give you some little tidbits that are just these are just little pieces of information that you may find in there. Mercury or moon in the seventh house. The person's likely to have two great loves. Not just two marriages, but two, especially Mercury, two major loves in their life, because Mercury is dual. The moon is similar. When I wrote this book, I didn't know computers. It was 1985. They were just beginning. So the third house is filled with information about mechanical, technical, computers, things like that. Another thing from experience, you come back from India and you're told that the moon is female. So you figure that the moon in the third gives a female sibling, younger sibling. You have the moon in the fifth, you figure you're going to have a girl. The moon is probably 50-50.
Okay.
Now, you have to understand this properly, because if the 10th ruler is conjunct with the moon or Venus, you may have a career that deals with women's items, right? The moon is female, but I'm just telling you from experience, the moon in the fifth can easily be a boy, just as much as it'll be a girl.
Okay.
That's only in that one realm. It still is female. There's no question. Okay. I'm telling you from experience. You take it from me. I have marked this.
Okay.
Saturn in the second house. You think, oh, this is terrible for money, et cetera, et cetera. I have a friend who is wealthy beyond belief. It was inherited wealth. Saturn in the second, aspected by Jupiter. And so I started to notice Saturn in the second, sometimes if it was well aspected, Saturn is karma. Saturn is karma. And it's specifically, it doesn't, I'm not saying that they actually might make a lot of money because Saturn's in the second. I'm saying that occasionally, if they have Saturn in the second well aspected, they will have inherited huge amounts of wealth. Just a karmic, it's just a karmic, feature. Another one that I really like is Venus in the ninth house. The guru, if you have Venus in the ninth house, the guru kind of treats you like a lover. They pull you aside. They give you special treatment. They give you special information they don't give others. This is not stuff that you will read, although you might read it in my book now, but those are the kind of things that are real specific. Another one, this is another fascinating one. Saturn in the first house. The person is lacks confidence. They are disciplined, responsible, austere, meditation, thin. You never read that they are selfish, because they don't honor themselves generally. They don't they don't feel good about themselves. They do for everybody else but themselves. Their own confidence is very weak.
Okay.
Occasionally, with Saturn in the first house near the ascendant, or Saturn with the sun, you can sometimes find these people that are incredibly selfish. And the reason for that is because their lives at a young age were so, they got so little that they feel so much scarcity that they feel like they have to protect themselves because they get nothing. So it's rare, but those are the things that you're going to find. Another that are not in the text. Another one is Venus is math. I didn't know that 40 years ago, but so like I was doing a chart recently, and Venus was in the fifth house, highly exalted. Not just in Pisces, but like 23, 25 Pisces, near the 27th degree. I said, your child's either going to be a great artist or a great mathematician. They said it was a genius mathematician.
How interesting.
Or Venus in the third house. The younger sibling will be an artist, could be female, could be a mathematician.
Okay.
It happens. These are the little subtleties. Another one is hairdressers. Oh my God. Oh my God. This is a good one. Because now when you go through the planets in the sixth house, you're going to see hairdresser mentioned 6 or 7 times. Why? I didn't know hairdressers from anything years ago. But as I'm doing horoscopes, I say to the person, you have to do service. You have Venus in the sixth house or moon. You can do service and you can do beautiful things. And they say, oh, I'm a hairdresser. I go, hairdresser? Over the years, I found a lot of hairdressers with Venus or Moon in the sixth house.
Okay.
Okay, so we got that covered with the hairdressers. Another one that I really emphasized. I think I wrote this in my first book,
Okay.
but nobody got it, so I emphasized it. People think that moving to a foreign country is the ninth house. No, living outside your own country is from an afflicted seventh house, which I said the last couple of years in my interviews. But now when you read the book, fallen planet in the seventh house, the person may go live in a foreign country.
Okay.
Okay. Another one was the Marakas. Now the Marakas, the rulers of the second and seventh house, for 35 years, I've had clients, they read the books and they say, oh my God, I'm coming to a Maraka period. Am I going to die? And I say, you come to a Maraka period every 3 or 4 years. You'd be dead 40 times already. They don't know this. So I've always said, if I could go back and rewrite the book, I'd pull the Marakas out of the book.
Okay.
But I can't pull the Marakas out of the book now. The genie's out of the bag.
Yeah.
So I explained it. And then I said, I bolded it. I said, you have Maraka periods every 3 or 4 years. I bolded it. And then I repeated it.
Nice. That's good to help like alleviate anxiety though, because I do know astrologers who don't teach about the markas at all because they're worried about freaking people out or having them, come to them freaking out. And so they won't even talk about the markas. And you're right. Like you've already mentioned it and people need to know. I mean, it's helpful information to know, but you've got to, one element isn't going to kill you.
The Marakas are, the thing that I learned, I've said this in other interviews, that my guru, when I was in my 20s, used to say the teacher learns more than the student. Writing this book, there were a certain number of conclusions and understandings that I came from working on this for a year. And one of them is that the Hindu Vedic system is really better used psychically because you have, so the Maraka is going to be useful when it's time to die. And psychically, they will pick that up. But one of the things that I said in the book is this idea of having 6 charts to use is not good. But I'm coming from the point of view of being a teacher, not teaching psychically, but teaching the way it really works. If you use, as some people do for a horoscope, the natal chart, the Bhava chart, the Chandra Lagna chart, and many people use the Navamsha chart as a natal chart after a certain age, and then they have the Karakamsha and the Aruda Lagna, and you go, if I have that many charts, I can find anything. Oh, so you're a plumber and I didn't know it. Oh, there's plumbing. I see it in that chart. Oh, you're a doctor. It doesn't show up in the natal, but here it is. Oh, you can find whatever you want. Now, if you are Indian and the psychic energy is just massive, that's what happens. They use all these different things. Another thing that I put in the book is that they mix the systems over there. And so when I was over there, I learned, in fact, I put it in my book and spread the word that the Atmakaraka, the indicator of the soul, is the sun, is always the Atmakaraka. It's the soul. And the planet in the highest degree, I said, is the Atmakaraka. But that is from the Jaimini system.
Yeah.
I knew that. And nobody hid that from me. I understood that. But my teachers were using it, so I put it in there. That's not a good idea for 2 reasons. One, in the Parashara system, the sun, which is the major system, the one that most people use because it's the most accurate, the Jaimini is not as good. It's good, but it's not as good. In the Parashara system, the sun as the Atmakaraka is good. So the sun is a malefic. The sun is a malefic planet. And it does cause problems, but it's also the Atmakaraka. And therefore, wherever the sun is placed, the person's going to have a lot of energy. This is something in the original book, I said the sun is bad here and bad there. And I didn't do enough to say that it's going to be really a vital area wherever the sun is. So what happens is I get clients and I'll say, look, your sun is in the 8th house. You're going to love astrology. It's the indicator of the soul. It's the Atmakaraka. And they would say, wait, my Atmakaraka is Venus. It's in this degree.
Mm-hmm.
Two things. One, the people forget the Atmakaraka in the system they're using. They're using the Parashara system and they have forgotten the Atmakaraka in that system. And they pull this Atmakaraka from a different system.
Yeah.
But the worst part is when I do Jaimini, I don't specialize in it, but when I do Jaimini and I find a person's in the Adasha that holds the Atmakaraka, it's not very good. The Atmakaraka I always thought would be wonderful, but in my experience and talking to other experienced people, they say the Atmakaraka periods, they're not so good. So it has all kinds of problems with it.
That is really fascinating. But have you found that using the Atmakarka, like you mentioned, with the highest degree, even if you're mixing the system like with the Parashara system, has accuracy in terms of a person's personality or personality qualities, like just like general tendencies?
The only thing that I used to use that Atmakaraka for was to say it's a very important planet.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't even use it. I don't think it's used properly.
Okay.
Mixing it in that system. I just don't think so. I prefer to use the Atmakaraka in the Parashara system. I think it's mixing systems, I think. So here's another thing. In the original book, I would talk about a planet having Dikbala. So Shadbala is a numerical system that tells you how strong a planet is. In fact, my original astrologer, Santanam, I said, I want to sit and read my horoscope. He said, I want to wait until we get the Shadbala, we get the computer program. By the time we got the computer program, the horoscope was wrong.
Aww.
It was the wrong chart. He never had the Shadbala. I don't happen to love Shadbala anyway, because it's numerical. My strongest planet in Shadbala is Jupiter. This is not my strongest planet by a long shot.
Mm-hmm.
My Saturn is.
Mm-hmm.
Jupiter's very afflicted by Mars and Saturn aspecting Jupiter to the degree. So I don't really love Shadbala. But anyway, Dikbala is one of the sources of strength, which I mentioned. Mm-hmm. So the Sun or Mars is in the 10th house and it gets Dikbala. Mm-hmm. And Saturn is in the 7th house and it gets Dikbala, right? So what you think normally is, so the best place for Mars and the Sun would be the 10th house. The best place for Venus would be the 4th house. The best place for Saturn would be the 7th house. Yeah. Oops. Yeah. Oops. Okay. So the Dikbala is not telling you this is the best house placement.
Yeah.
It's telling you that when it is in that house, that planet becomes strong. So a person with Saturn in the 7th house, they have marriage troubles. But Saturn the houses that Saturn rules will be very strong, or their sense of discipline and responsibility or meditation will be very strong, but it'll still hurt. Mm-hmm. So that's just,
Yeah. And that's something that I talk about too, is that just because a planet is strong doesn't mean it's going to give good results. It could also give strong, bad results.
That's an interesting thing also that I mentioned in this book, is that this took me a too long time to learn. Exalted Saturn is a real disappointment. Jupiter fallen is never as bad. I shouldn't say never. Jupiter fallen once in a while, especially when it gets toward the 5th degree, can be devastating, but it's rare. Most fallen Jupiters will not produce what I wrote in the original book.
Okay.
Oh, Jupiter's fallen, it's going to cause this problem and that problem. Most of the times it's just not that bad. And then when I say Saturn's exalted, the person's going to have this wonderful, it doesn't produce most of the times. Mm-hmm. When it gets toward the 20th degree of Libra, sometimes it does, but it's rare. Mm-hmm. That's in the book. That's in the book for every time you read your exalted Saturn in this house, your fallen Jupiter in this house, it'll say the bad stuff. And then right after the bad stuff, it'll say, Jupiter's the one planet that when it's fallen, it's not so bad.
Yeah. Have you noticed that in Navamsha, like in D9 with a debilitated Jupiter? Because I've noticed this. I've noticed this a few different times, that having a debilitated Jupiter in the D9, and of course, I mean, there are different things to consider, but I have noticed it be difficult for a
Yeah,
relationship.
see, this was the major learning. I didn't intend to learn anything. I was just doing this so that this book would be the best book it could be. By the time it was over, I realized everybody has to find their own way. The
Okay.
Navamsha to me is nothing but a marriage chart. Now, look, I'm contradicting who knows how many famous, wonderful, brilliant astrologers, who knows how many hundreds of years, but I'm just telling you, I only use what works for me.
Yeah.
So for me, the Navamsha is nothing but a marriage chart. That's all it is. And all I use is the seventh house. A little, maybe 10-20% the first house. So in other words, I'm looking at the planets in the seventh house,
Mhm.
what houses they rule that are in the seventh, where the seventh house ruler is. That's it. And aspects you don't use in divisional charts anyway. That's all I use. For the career chart, all I use is the 10th house,
Mhm.
planets in the 10th, where the 10th house ruler is,
Mhm.
because that's the only thing I could find to work. Now,
Mhm.
other people use the chart as a whole. They talk about the November. I mean, it's in my first book. I
Mhm.
had to, in this revision,
Mhm.
let me tell you, in the original book, it's it says, here's how you draw the horoscope. As soon as the horoscope is drawn, the next thing is the Navamsha. I say the Navamsha is so important and blah, 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 blah. Now, I took the Navamsha and I took that and I moved it all the way to the back of the
It
book.
is, yeah.
It's in the back of the book.
Yeah.
Now I mentioned that other astrologers use it in all sorts of ways, but I don't. I put it in the back as one of the divisional charts because the thing is, and my wife said this to me when I was doing this one, the when I was doing this art and practice book.
Mhm.
I remember acknowledging my wife in the acknowledgements because I would say to her, I don't know if I want to tell people this thing that for me is very real, but she said, James, what they want from you is your experience. It's their job to find out whether it works for them. And I say that you have to experiment and find what works, but I tell people what works for me, and that's it.
Okay.
And I've taken some flack from that. There was one review, there was one review of that book, and the guy went nuts. The guy said, this is a terrible book because he tells you that this doesn't work and this Vargotama doesn't work and Nietzsche Bunga most of the time doesn't work. And so it's terrible. Now, the review is really absurd because it says in the beginning of the book, it
Mhm.
says, I'm telling you what works, and you have to find what works for you and experiment with it, you
Mhm.
know? So,
Yeah, well, I had a question about that as well. And I feel like this is a good segue into it. Is, do you feel that the best way to approach using this book is to read it cover to cover? Because it's also kind of like a dictionary. I feel like it's also a really helpful book in, like, if you're trying to decipher your own chart and you have Venus in the fourth house, you can open up the book and find it. But would you recommend reading like at least the intro, or what would you how would you recommend approaching the book for
first
a
of, first of all, the preface is 12 pages.
Mhm.
That preface, I would read the preface 3 or 4 times before getting into the book. But let
Okay.
me just tell you this. When I started astrology, this was 4 or 5 years before Hindu Vedic. I was late 70s, and I bought all these books, and Isabel Hickey's book, Astrology, A Cosmic Science, was the best book on the subject. It put all the others to shame. I read this book and I was gobsmacked. I was flabbergasted. I said, how does this woman know all of this stuff?
Mhm.
I said, oh, she's 70. So she's been in the field. This is a big problem because you write your books in your 30s to try to get some fame. By the time you're 60, you don't care, you don't want to do it anymore. But that's when the books should be written, when you've had the experience. So I remember I said, I'm going to memorize this book. I am going to learn everything that she put in this book. I'm going to learn and memorize. And guess what? You can't do it by a long shot. You just can't do it. So this book is like that. It's taking one astrologer's lifetime of work. It's putting it all in that book. It is, I wrote it for a reference text. That's why the planets and the houses, 108 of those things. And I didn't only put in everything that I could figure out and know. I also did research on the planets and houses as well. I pulled out a lot of crap that was in there and put in the stuff that's more accurate.
Okay.
So it is absolutely a book that people should use throughout their, when you're analyzing a horoscope and you say, hey, what does that mean, that planet, that house? You go to this book. At the same time, there's a lot when I'm talking about the what a retrograde planet is, when I'm talking about the divisional charts, when I'm talking about, there's so much stuff in there that took a long time to learn. So I would absolutely read it from start to finish. Now, you don't need to read how to calculate the horoscopes. I even considered taking them out.
Okay.
But I said, why should I take it out? Some people want to know that. 35 years ago, I actually calculated horoscopes. It took me 3 or 4 hours. I'd calculate the Western horoscope. From there, I would calculate the Hindu Vedic. It took hours and hours, but I used to do that. So I put it in there. You don't need to look at that. But the rest of the stuff, you should, I would say, yes, you read it cover to cover. And I wouldn't try to read too much at a time because otherwise you lose, take half hour, and that's it. And then come back the next day and do it. But it's a reference text. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
I didn't write those 108 planets and houses, fallen and exalted, and what kind of healing methods to do so that somebody would read it once and then put it away. It's a reference text.
Yeah.
That's I really appreciate your asking that question.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the other questions was, if you already bought the first book, why would you buy the second? But I feel like this entire conversation has shed light on that.
Let me tell you something.
Yeah.
I have 800 ancient Hindu astrology books in my shed that are being sold by distributors right now. I am trying to find a way to get them. The books are sold by Amazon, right? I'm trying to get my distributor to buy those the new book. And this is going to be, I mean, if I were to sell those 800 books, which I sell them, it takes a matter of time, but 800 books times, I probably get about $7 or $8 for that. So that's about $6,000 or $7,000 that is going to go down the toilet. But I would prefer that people have the new book. I would prefer they take the old one and throw it in the trash.
Okay, because lots of people have bought your book after I referred them to buy it.
You know what? I know what that sounds like, but let me tell you something. $32.
Yeah.
$32 to get the essence of what took 35 years to learn. You shouldn't give it a second thought.
Yeah, no, I mean, I didn't. I bought it immediately. So yeah.
I am going to take those other 800 books and I'm going to try to donate them to libraries and stuff like that. But
yeah.
I mean,
really, I
think
that'd be great.
What?
I think that would be phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have donated that book to libraries, and you see it in the card catalog and you go to look for it and it's gone because people steal astrology books.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I love that. I love the idea of donating them, and because that could be somebody's first introduction to astrology, and then they could find your new book and buy it. Yeah. And so the final question, because I know you're always generous with time and we're coming up on the hour, but I know that writing a book is very taxing, and you've expressed that you'll kind of like lose motivation, and then your wife would give you a pep talk and then you'd feel very energized. But what was your favorite part about writing the book? Like, this could be just like an element of writing the book that you enjoyed, or a section of the book that you enjoyed writing?
First of all, every time I corrected something like retrogrades, like Marakas, anytime I corrected, or the Navamsha saying no, and Vargotama doesn't work. Every time I corrected that, it was like a thrill in my heart. I will tell you that. But the favorite part was in doing the famous horoscopes. And they would go on. I mean, it would take, I would think, well, I just have to update this. I just have to kind of fix it.
Yeah.
And then I'd be 3 weeks on John Lennon. I'd be 3 weeks on Lyndon Johnson. I mean, so it was only the fact that I kept wanting the result. That was the problem. It wasn't that I minded doing it. It's that I kept saying, like, if you hear these videos of me, oh, the book's going to be out in March, in April, in May, and that's what was frustrating me. I kept thinking I should have completion. But working on those horoscopes, and I've had, one of the guys that was proofreading it, Dennis Boyle was proofreading, and he said the analysis of the famous horoscopes, he said they're incredibly thorough. And there's this thing I always mention. This is just, to me, this is remarkable. Lyndon Johnson's chart works perfectly anyway. It works very, very well. It's not a chart. It works very well. And one day, you have to, I mean, the thing is, I've read books on Lyndon Johnson, so I know a lot about him. He cheated throughout his elections, up until he got maybe to the, Senate and Congress, even though he probably cheated, but he cheated all his way, throughout. And he manipulated. He was a manipulator. He was like Machiavelli. He knew how to manipulate. And one day I was looking at the horoscope as I was at the computer. Ketu, which is illusion, deception, manipulation. Ketu aspects Mars, Jupiter, Sun, Moon, and one other, I think Venus or something.
Wow.
Ketu aspects 2 or 3 planets within 1 or 2 degrees. And then it aspects the others a little bit wider. I do charts every day for years.
Yeah.
And I am looking at Rahu and Ketu aspects always. I can't remember a chart. I can remember charts where 3 or 4 planets were conjunct with Ketu, and that's big. I don't remember a horoscope where Ketu aspects 5 planets.
Yeah.
And when you read about him, his ability to manipulate and do things behind the scenes, it's just perfect symbolism.
Wow.
And my teachers did not use Rahu Ketu aspects.
Oh, interesting.
They told me they aspect the 5th, 7th, they aspect the 7th and the 5th and the 9th. They don't aspect the 7th.
Sure.
Because Rahu and Ketu, they're opposite each other anyway.
Yeah.
So I knew that it was in the scriptures, but they said nobody uses them. The reason I started using them was because occasionally I would see a horoscope where a planet or a house was aspected by one malefic plus Rahu or Ketu. It was always worse. The planet or the house that was aspected by the malefic was always much worse if Rahu or Ketu joined in the mix. That's when I knew these aspects work. Now I use them, but I don't just consider them evil and bad and terrible. And by the way, I got rid of the word evil in this book because Santanam, my first teacher, Santanam, used to say, this is evil, this is evil. I used evil, but people take it, I just mean harmed or bad. I just pulled it out. But
what about the term completely destroyed? Do you use that one in the new one? Because I remember evil and I remember completely destroyed.
I don't mind completely destroyed because there are planets that are completely destroyed.
There are planets that are completely destroyed.
Evil is evil. The problem with evil is they don't see that as being completely destroyed or terrible or harmed. They think it's like this,
Like, yeah. I got you.
you know,
Like
it's a
tainted, dirty, like scary.
it's the devil.
Yeah.
So I took that out. Yeah.
Okay. Just wondering.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else that you want to add about the book? Anything that you want to share or?
No, just everybody has to find their own way.
Mhm.
When you so I do say that people should find one teacher and study with them and get everything you can. And then when you've gotten what you want, you move on, to another teacher or whatever. Um, so when you read a James Braha book, you're reading. I am always looking for the truth. I'm always looking for what works. I don't want the philosophy. I don't want what somebody else said. I
Mhm.
want to know that it absolutely works. Okay.
Mhm.
And so if that's what you're looking for, which most people are actually looking for that. But
Yes.
this is a psychic field. This is a psychic field.
Mhm.
And, you know, uh, I mean, Nietzsche Bunga works about maybe 10 or 20% of the time, which is useless for me. That means if when I came back from India, I said, "Oh, this planet's fallen, but it has Nietzsche Bunga.
Mhm.
So the fallen placement is canceled. It'll be a yoga. It'll be great." And
Mhm.
I'd be wrong 8 out of 10 times, so I stopped using it. But if you're psychic, you may be looking at a Nietzsche Bunga planet and say, "Oh my God, I get the feeling that one's really going to work."
Yeah.
If you're psychic, but that's not for me.
Okay.
I took a class in the late 70s in astrology and Kabbalah, and there was this one of the classes was on psychic phenomenon, and I was good at it. I remember I held this guy's watch and I started telling him, and he said, "My God, that is so accurate." It was about, I said, "You're this girl really likes you and you act like you don't even know it." And he said, "That's what everybody tells me." So, but I said, I don't want any part of that. I don't want that because I wouldn't know when to trust my intuition. I would prefer Santa Padia says, "You take it from me. I have marked this."
Mhm.
And then I know. And I even say, I say in the preface, if you read the planets in the houses slowly, and thinking about what the house means and what the planet means, occasionally you'll hear a little whisper of James Braha going, "You take it from me. I have marked this."
Okay. Yes. Perfect. Well, congratulations on finishing your book.
And Padia is getting the book today.
Really?
I mailed him a copy. It was very expensive because it's a 5 pound book or whatever. But he's getting the book in India today. Yeah.
Maybe sometime we can do another interview talking about your teachers. I didn't even know he was still around.
The funny thing is, um, Santanam, if you look in my book, Astrologos, Santanam is this. I was 33, 34. He was probably 38 or 39. When I went to his house, I thought I was going to this, because they said, "Oh, he's a famous teacher. He's a famous translator." I thought I'm going to see a 60-year-old guy with a beard. I get there and he's a few years older than me. In the book, he's holding a picture of his baby. He
Oh,
was going to come to the 1997 or 1998 Vedic Astrology Conference. I was going to go and introduce him.
okay.
He died that year.
Oh
In
my God.
fact, in fact, in fact, James Kelleher, an astrologer with the Vedic Astrology Conference, went to see Santanam and he said, "Can you commit to coming to the Vedic Astrology Conference this year?" And he said, "I will let you know after such and such a month."
Mm.
And he took his son with him to Benares, which is where you go to die.
Wow.
If you die in Benares, they say you go to heaven or whatever. So he knew he had, I don't know if he had illness and was sick and had cancer. I don't know, but he wasn't. He must have been 45. He wasn't old.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it sounds like he knew that he was going to
Oh,
pass.
he knew there was danger, so he took
Yeah.
his kid. And I heard from his son Srinivas
Mhm.
about 5, 7 years ago. I got an email. He said, "I am Srinivas," which is the little kid in the photo. He was a little kid when I was there, a little baby.
Yeah.
And he said, "I want to learn astrology." So I sent him all my books, but you can't. I don't think he had the bug for astrology.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
he
yeah.
was looking at it as a way of making a living or something.
Yeah. You've got to really want it. You know, you've got to really want it and study it every day. And then I think it also, as you were saying, and I hear that you approach astrology with a much more like practical, grounded technique, which makes sense for you. But
That's all I do. I'm not,
yeah.
yeah.
But I
What do I,
think that there is, though, I think that there is this element of like an undeniable intuition that good astrologers have. And it's like, rather they're aware that they're tuning into it or not, like, you know,
no, no, that happens to me. I'll be doing a chart and I'll think medical. I say, medical, where's medical? And I
Mhm.
start looking and digging because the intuition comes. But
Mhm.
that's different from,
Like,
I'm telling, that's different. That's different from having a natal chart, a bhava chart, a
yeah,
chandra chart, a Ruta Lugna chart, a Karakamsha chart. I mean, it's just different than that. Some people can do that. You want to do that? That's fine. I don't. It doesn't work for me.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, it should show up in the natal and it should show up in the the bhava chart is part of the natal as far as I'm concerned.
yeah, yeah. Well, on a comment on one of the videos I posted with us, someone said, "You're a no BS astrologer." So
I
if you
get that
didn't
all.
see
I
that
get that all. I get that all the time. I get that all the time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's been so good talking with you again. Thank you for
Thank you.
taking the time. I'm excited to share it. I hope that people get the book because it's awesome. I'm really excited to continue looking through it. And congratulations again on finishing. I know it's a
Thank you.
huge project. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, James. Well, I'll talk to you soon. Oh,
I'm
wait,
hope. Let me say one thing.
please.
I'm hoping to do some online teaching in 2021. First, I have to fix my website. I need to update my website completely, and then I will. I'd like to do some online teaching.
Are you thinking of recorded teaching or live teaching? Or is that still in like the work?
It would be live, I think.
Okay. Well, I'll be there. So I'll be watching out for that. All right, James. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye.